Hello, this is Yaakov Kronenberg, and tonight we'll be doing another class in our series of classes on Cancer Ascendant with the moon in the different houses. We'll start off tonight with Cancer in Aries, right? The Cancer really always wants every house. It's interesting. We haven't talked about this we really had some classes on the archetypes. One of my original classes was on the archetypes, and we see every house, every sign fulfills itself 10 signs away from it, right? And so the Cancer Ascendant, right, it really fulfills itself in Aries, right? The Cancer, that's person who wants the security, the home, to be comforted, to be emotionally secure. It's really, its drive is to become an independent being, right? That's the moon in the Aries. The Cancer craves to become an Aries, to become an independent, self-sufficient leader who can, come and do things. So in every house, every sign has a way that, another sign that fulfills itself in. So you always have to look at both of those houses very carefully. Like if you want to really know about the ascendant, you also have to pay close attention to the midheaven, because that's where the Cancer is going to want to fulfill itself, ideally. And so when you have somebody Cancer rising with the moon in the house of where it goes for the fulfillment, of course it becomes very strong, and it becomes very career-oriented, very future-oriented when you have that situation. Of course, every sign tries to go to change itself, right? So when you're trying to change yourself, it's hard work, and that's why always the 1 and 10 are in squares. Right? If a person has 1 and 10 in square, then they're going to try to change themselves. They try to fulfill themselves. You'll see later on. We'll see, because of the different positions, on the globe where somebody can be born. Sometimes you'll have instead of the 10th house, instead of say Aries on the 10th house cusp, you'll have Taurus. A lot of on the 10th house cusp, or Pisces, and therefore then in that situation a person won't work to complete themselves as much, to change their fundamental nature. But when you have Cancer wanting to become an Aries on the 10th house cusp, then you're going to have a person that's going to again want to change himself. When you want to change yourself, that's work. It's not easy. What did Yisrael Salanta say? It's easier to learn all of the Talmud, right? We just see today is the finishing of the learning of the Talmud. 1 page a day for 7.5 years, and people finished it, and now they're celebrating. And what did Yisrael Salanta say? It's easier to learn the whole Talmud than to change one character trait. And so you see, it's a major struggle when you have the moon, say, in the Cancer chart, with the moon in the 10th house, because the person is going to try to change themselves. But in any case, when you have moon in Aries, so it becomes very important for your self-importance, right? The moon is the unconscious, and Aries always wants to be number one. It wants to be the tops, and especially when it's in the 10th house, as this it has this drive to be Mr. One, right? Mr. or Mrs. Number One. And they want to be. They have a very strong need to be important, and they get their security by being important, by who they are, by how they develop their profession, right? Their standing in their profession. And so you look at it. I'm going to do a chart tonight. Actually, let's do the chart tonight of a famous painter. His name was Salvador Dali. Spanish painter, painted about 1,500 paintings, considered one of the great painters of the 20th century. I'm not going to talk too much about his painting tonight, because he was a Cancer rising with moon in Aries, and he had 4 planets in Taurus, which competes with the Cancer ascendant. Right? So with those 4 planets in Taurus, that's where a lot of the artistic ability comes in his chart. He's got the Venus there in Anna, the Sun there, Mars, and Mercury, and they're all in a very creative house, the 11th house. Right, the opposite of the 5th house, again a house connected with the arts. And so you see that from there. What I want to talk about is what was his moon doing in Aries. Right? So moon in Aries is, besides being an artist, he was known for, he publicized himself. How did he become a famous painter? Besides natural talent, he was tremendously he was great at advertising himself, right? He used to talk in the third person. Dali said this, Dali said that, as if he was, super important. And that's the moon in Aries there. And he publicized himself. He wore these exotic clothing, and he had, all different, exotic animals that he would take with him, and he had a really unusual mustache, and everything to so he would stick out. And that's the moon in Aries. He wants to be the number one. And more than that, right? See, if you look at his aspects to the moon, remember we did last week, I think it was General Patton. He was a mild Virgo, Gemini rising, Mercury and Sagittarius, and we showed that, because he had all these Martian aspects to his ruling planet, he became a warrior. If you look at Mr. Dali's chart, what aspects his moon? Just the outer planets. The only planets that really make an aspect to his chart, to his ruling planet, are the three outer planets. Right? He's got Uranus, the planet of weirdness, of unusualness, of the high octave of Mercury. It's almost exactly square to the moon. He's got Neptune, the planet of, trying to lose touch with reality, to get to a higher consciousness, that's to get outside the self. That's also square his, almost exactly square his moon. Those two planets are almost exactly square his moon. And then besides that, he's got Pluto also almost exactly sextile his moon. So those are the only planets to really aspect his moon. And so they're all the wild planets, the outer planets, which really want the unconventional. And so he was the master of unconventionality, right? Because he had, first of all, he was a great propagandist of himself, and then he had all the outer planets there, inciting his moon, the moon with the desire to be number one, and he fulfilled that by being weird, right? Weird clothing, weird appearances, weird makeup, weird haircuts, mustaches, weird taking wild animals with him, all sorts of stuff. Having fanciful ideas, all sorts of things like this to make himself important. And so we see that in his chart, is really it stands out there. Always when the outer planets are important, it's going to be a person who wants an unconventional life. And you see in his chart, really, those three planets make tight aspects to the ascendant. And he just has a weaker aspect with Jupiter, which gives him great career success, right? The moon is in the same sign as Jupiter. They're maybe 12, 13 degrees apart, but it still is going to give him, it's going to add to that Jupiterian ability. Jupiter is going to give expansion to that moon, which is nice, and it'll give him that career success. And so that's it. And so you have to always pay close attention. Besides the ruling planet, what house it's in, you have to always look also the 10th house from the ascendant, because that's going to be where the person wants to get to in life somehow. And so you see that in his chart. He had the moon there. And then you look at the aspects to the ruling planet and how that alters the ruling planet, plus the aspects to the ascendant, right? We didn't go into that tonight, the aspects to the ascendant, but you see the planets in Taurus Well, let's forget about that tonight. We don't want to go off too much in tangents, because we're looking at the ruling planet, the moon, and I think we had a good idea of how the planets aspecting the moon change the moon's orientation. And I thank everybody for listening.